This is Michael Woodward, and this is episode 55 of the Jumblethink podcast.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the Jumblethink podcast, a podcast focused on telling the stories of dreamers, makers, innovators, and influencers. Along the way, we'll give you some tips on how you can chase your big idea and dream and make it a reality. On the podcast today, we have father-son team Bix and Joe Bickson. More about them in a moment. On Thursday's episode, we have a brother team. It is Elin and Guy Ferdman. They are life coaches, entrepreneurs, podcasters, speakers, so much more. They have been featured on The Art of Charm, Huffington Post, Entrepreneur Magazine, Freedom, Fastlane, Superhuman Entrepreneur, so much more. They are truly relentless dreamers. Their story is inspirational, and I can't wait to share it with you this Thursday. Do you have a big idea and dream and you don't know where to start? Head on over to jumblethink.com and check out our resource center where you can find books from our past guests, along with some resources for podcasting or chasing your dream right there. Just head on over to jumblethink.com, click the resources page, and you'll be connected with some great resources for your journey. Now let's jump into our interview with Bix and Joe Bickson. Our guests on the podcast today are Bix and Joe Bickson of Bickson Squared. Super cool company. They are future hackers. We'll talk more about what that means and what they do. They've worked with executive teams from companies like Adobe, Microsoft, Chevron, Guinness, Starbucks, Ford, and many others. They are a multi-generational team, baby boomer and millennial, father, son, and that story is pretty incredible. Now let's jump into my interview with Bix and Joe. Super excited to have our guests on today. Their names are Bix and Joe Bickson. They're doing some cool stuff. They're based out of Vancouver, Canada. I hope you guys are enjoying the weather up there. How you doing?
Oh, the weather's fabulous. We had a more than usual wet spring, so we're all delighted with this nice, hot, sunny summer.
Yes, good to be here, Michael.
You are doing some cool stuff. You have a company called Bixson Squared or B Squared or Bixson 2, Bixson2.com. Tell us a little bit about it, what it is and what you guys do.
Okay, I'll go first. This is Bix. Reading all the books, and we know that one of the things that's said over and over again in today's world is you have to disrupt yourself or others will do it for you. And so that's really been the story of my life. You know how when people get awards, they thank their parents? Well, I want to thank my parents for being so dysfunctional that I learned about disruption very early as a child. My life has been a series of disruptions. When I went to University of Trinity University, I was a journalism major. And in my senior year, I published my own newspaper. And they thought, well, that's nice, but you're no longer able to go to university here because it was one of those kind of newspapers that called into question a lot of what the university was doing. That was a huge disruption. And then I ended up being in Berkeley in the late 60s. And from there, going up to Canada and literally living off the grid with other friends, some Canadians and some from the U.S., in the woods, living off the grid for 10 years.
Wow.
And from there, creating a consulting business of walking into Guinness, Microsoft, Starbucks, Lululemon, and many, many more to hack the future with them. So that's my life has been a series of welcomes and sometimes very uncomfortable, but in retrospect, disruptions.
Yes, and as you can tell, being Bix's son, this is like a welcome to my life kind of experience. So Bix is the baby boomer, and who I am is the millennial. And so, I've had the opportunity to grow up and be a part of this story, my story starts in the 90s, and I grew up playing video games and taking part in this generation, the things that we're doing as a generation, and really my life has led me to here, to my work with B2, with Bix, walking into companies, walking into organizations, and hacking the future, which we can talk more about later, Michael. But so that's a bit about me.
That's really, really cool. It sounds like it's been a unique but also very adventurous journey that you both have been on, to come back to this place where father and son working together, creating a new approach to how businesses create their future.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about what it's like to be a father and son and to work in that dynamic, the baby boomer, the millennial, two worlds
Yes.
colliding. What's that like?
Well, for me, this is Bix. It's two things. Number one, it's a huge gift to work with Joe and to work with my son. It's a huge gift that we really didn't expect, because Joe went to university and was doing all kinds of very interesting things. And one day I asked him, does he want to do this thing with me? So on one side, it's a huge gift. And then when people ask me about it, my response is, he's very patient.
Yes. For me, it's thanks for asking the question. It's been a humbling experience, and yes, Bix is very patient, and also I'm doing my best to stay humble, and this kind of work definitely keeps me there, challenging myself, going in to speak with leadership teams, CEOs, has absolutely been a gift to my life and absolutely challenges me and in every way.
The other thing, that we sort of take for granted, but I love your question called what is it like for us to work together? Because we take it for granted, but we know that there is an experience getting created when we're there of people sitting there going, they're a father and son. What's that like? Yeah.
I'm not going to let you go that easily. I want to dive a little bit deeper into the larger
Sure.
cultural question here.
Yes.
And, millennials are getting pretty hammered by boomers as a whole. They're lazy. They're just, they have no passion. They can't stick out a job. They can't do this. They can't do that. They can't whatever. I don't tend to think that's completely a good picture of the reality, but what's one thing that, I guess there's two questions here. Here's the first question. What's one takeaway that you've learned about the other generation by working not only as a father and son relationship, but also in the workplace, being coworkers, in creating what you're creating? What have you learned about the other generation that you wish more people knew?
Well, one thing is that they're just like us. At my age, it's easy to look at the baby boomers and say, oh, they absolutely have been, the past 60 years have been, creating businesses that have really been destroying the world. And there's lots of those conversations regarding, look at this mess that we've walked into as the millennial generation. So now we're supposed to clean it up. That's one perspective. The perspective that I am most often taking is the one that I recognize, if I were in their shoes, I probably would have been doing the same things. And the opportunity that I see and that I have been seeing is that, through this work, it's not just millennials and baby boomers. Each generation has to reinvent ourselves as human beings on the planet Earth, because we all have this opportunity together, this short time on the planet, to really make a difference. So, if it was one thing that stuck with me about this other generation, it's that they're just like me, only presented with a different world.
And one other aspect, Michael, is that we live up here with the First Nations, and there's one of the First Nations is called the Salish, and they have this saying, when somebody asks them about the world they're leaving for their children, the saying is, it's not about the world we're leaving for our children, it's about the children we're leaving for our world. So, I have this great gift in my life that we get to create this together.
And you mentioned that it's a great gift that you're getting to create together.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people who, when they're raising children, they think of, oh, I'm so busy. I've got to create my career. I've got to create wealth for my family, whatever scale that looks like to them. And then as they get older, they look back and say, I regret the time I missed. And then there's the whole, when you're growing up as a kid, you want your parents' attention. You get to that point when you're like a teenager and then in college and then post-college where you don't have time for the parent. What is one thing that you would tell others that they really need to do in valuing their family, valuing those relationships, and valuing other generations?
You are a good interviewer. Oh my gosh, that's a heck of a question. There's, as you know, with your own children, there is some very special experiences that we get to have when we're with our children or our children are with us. And I think, for me, the thing that we say is that, the world is out there. By the time you check out of a supermarket and read all the magazines, you're not famous enough, you're not rich enough, you're not thin enough, you're not powerful enough, you're not handsome enough, you're not beautiful enough. And so the world has designed itself in such a way that there's these continuous messages of invalidation. And for sure, our job as parents is to remind and to, in any way we can, allow our children not to be pushed around by those messages, but to recognize that who they are is this incredible expression in the world and give them all the permission they need to live that expression. Does that respond to your question?
Absolutely. Joe, do you have any thoughts on that?
I'd say that for myself, it's really the opportunity is to, in each opportunity that I've seen in my life, if I were to look back on all the experiences that I've had, is that really to continue to build a bridge over, a lot of the conversations that I hear today are, well, millennials are absolutely, they're different. And so I think that there's lots of conversations that tend to divide us. And so when you ask the question about family, how can we value the relationships in our lives? It's that we shift the conversation from one of, well, we're so different, to the, there's actually a real opportunity for us to work together. And, as in my work with Bix is I've seen that I really have something to contribute inside of our work because, I bring there's a new world of exponential organizations, a new world of platforms, of changing technology, of, businesses having to deal with this disruptive kind of change. And so when, Bix has been in this world of leadership, hacking the future for many years. And, I think when we talk about valuing ourselves, valuing the people around us and our relationships and families, we really have to build a way to look at the world that allows us to work together rather than one that allows us to maybe be separate or have a conversation that leaves us without relationship or relatedness.
Yeah, it's really good. As we transition into talking about what you're creating internally as a company, but also helping other organizations create.
Yeah.
One question I think is a good transition point is, you mentioned when you go into these meetings, they're like, "Oh, you're his son, or you're his father," and you're meeting with these high stakes clients.
Yes.
There's power in having multiple generations in their perspective and working with customers and clients. How has that created a benefit for you by combining multiple generations' outlook and worldviews as you approach your customers?
Good question, Michael. Well, one of our important elements of what we do is it has to be fun. Because as you know from looking out into the world, and from the world of organizations and the world of performance and the world of results and the world of achievement and the world of everybody needs to do this and do this, do this. I think one of the things that with Joe and I working together is that it's fun. We have fun. As far as we're concerned, most of life is trying to translate whatever's happening into a really good Saturday Night Live skit.
I love that.
Yeah, because many times we look at each other when we're working and we're saying, okay, let's just make the new series of The Office. Right? Because whatever's happening in these companies is so absurd, so ridiculous, so clear that it can be shifted and really create something in the midst of that. So that's one way we definitely approach it. And our big question. The difficulty with being a father and son is we have the same mannerisms. we have the same words. We have the same, obviously genetically we look a lot alike, except I don't have hair. And so, it's weird for people. It's like, are these guys from the Matrix or something? And so we have to say, I have to call Joe in the morning and go, what color shirt are you wearing? What color pants? So to make sure, because we're already look like, cyborgs or something. Who are these people that look the same, act the same, talk the same, except one is a younger version and one is an older version.
Yeah, that's right. Yes. Yeah. So I'll respond to that question also, Michael. You asked, what can we learn from other generations? One thing I want to go back to is, let's go back 100 years to several generations ago. There's a story that we call ourselves future hackers, and we look up to those characters, those stories that have really shown us what's possible in the world of future hacking. And so one of our favorite stories is a guy named Sir Ernest Shackleton.
Okay.
And in 1914, Sir Ernest Shackleton was in London, and he put out an ad to the London Times, and it said, "Men and women wanted for hazardous journey, low wages and bitter cold. The safe return is doubtful." And so, of course, this is an intriguing ad. 5,000 people applied for what was, at the time, what Ernest Shackleton had designed a voyage for the first ever journey across the Antarctic continent.
Wow.
And so he sets off in 1914. He selected 28 people from this batch of 5,000 that signed up. And there's all kinds of great stories about how he chose these people, mainly from their attitude rather than from, their skills or ability to sail or things like that, which is a lesson in leadership. The long story short, he spent 2 years. The journey was planned for several months, and they got stuck in the ice. And the ship literally froze in the ice flow.
Wow.
And they drifted around. It was the winter time in Antarctica, which means no sunlight.
Yeah.
And to give some perspective, a previous journey had gone through that kind of experience of the winter in Antarctica, and they literally went crazy because they couldn't see anything. Long story short is Sir Ernest Shackleton and his crew of 28, every single person survived. And there's an infinite number of stories about how they had to live on the ice, how they had to hunt the seals, how they had to brave the 50-foot waves and 22-foot lifeboats and sail 500 miles and all these incredible stories. But Sir Ernest Shackleton is really one of our absolute favorite future hackers, and there's a lot that we can learn from. It's definitely a different generation, and that, you know, the way that he operated. People might say, a lot of times when we tell this story, people say, well, what does that have to do with right now? What my business is dealing with, what I'm dealing with in my organization right now. And the truth is that it has everything to do with it. It was a leadership situation, an absolutely complex, difficult circumstances with a crew of people who are attempting to create something, or in this case, survive. So that's one response to that question that goes back 100 years from now.
We're going to dive into future hacking a little bit. I've heard of futurists.
Yes.
We've heard of consultants.
Yes.
What is a future hacker?
Well, for one thing, I was one of those C words for many years. And so now we say future hacking, the end of consulting. I have tremendous regard and respect and friends with many C word people. And so that's the first thing. And, our job is to continuously create ways that people can think and see differently than they thought that they can see and think. So, the easy definition of a future hacker is someone that can design and create and fulfill the future of their choosing. And the way to think about that is, for the most part, we all know that mostly when we go about attempting to accomplish what we're committed to, we hack the past. We look into what's already happened to see if that'll give us the future that we're committed to. And the difficulty with that is it gives us more, different, and better. But all the breakthroughs in the history of humankind were not a product of more, different, and better. They were a product of something created, like your podcast, dreamers, makers, innovators, and influencers. So then the question is, how does that happen? And one way to think about it is, one of the references we watch all the time is there's a baseball player standing in the batter's box. And for all the baseball players, the pitcher throws their 90, 98 mile an hour fastball. Some of those hitters hit the ball and some of those do not.
Right.
But it's the same ball. It's the same batter's box. It's pretty well the same bat. Pretty well they look almost the size, they're various, but not that much in height or weight or size. And yet there are some that hit the ball consistently. And of course, the other side of that is even the best only hit 3 or 4 out of every 10. And that baseball is a game of failure, and businesses need to learn that as much as the other side, because, we think that we're supposed to hit the ball all the time. Okay, that's the whole other conversation.
Yeah.
but the other one is, what is happening for the batter that hits the ball? And future hacking is they see something coming at them different from the people that don't hit the ball.
Okay.
As you've heard the analogy, the ball slows down and gets bigger. So they have all the time in the world to swing their bat and hit the ball. Future hacking is having the ball slow down and get bigger, so you and your business have all the time in the world to accomplish what you're committed to.
There's a couple things there. The first one is that certain people are seeing patterns and things that other people are missing. So that's pretty powerful.
Yes.
How can someone start seeing what's unseen? How can they start looking to the future And based on the patterns, I mean, there's a great book called How Should We Then Live by Francis Schaeffer, which was a study of history. And then he made predictions. He was a futurist based on cultural, civilization, art, religion, science, on the trends that we're experiencing that he could predict the future. Based on history, which is basically the same thing you're saying there. What are the skills or what are the things that these businesses, these individuals, whether they're a person that is an individual or even a corporation, should start doing to see those unseen markers along their journey so that they can start creating the future?
Well, future hacking is a body of what we call big ideas. And one of the so-called big ideas that we invite people to consider, and the first conversation we have is to say to people that when we speak to you, who you are for us is that you're already successful, that you're already accomplished, that you're already intelligent, that you're already committed, that you're already dedicated human beings. Because that's true for us. They wouldn't be sitting or standing in the room unless they had already built a foundation of success, accomplishment, commitment, dedication in their lives and in their careers. Because so many times they have experienced those C-word people coming in, and the message that the company is communicating is there's something wrong with you that we need to fix. So we are attempting right at the beginning of our conversations to defeat that notion that there's something wrong with you versus there's something right with you. And on top of that foundation that you've already built in your lives and in your careers, we're inviting you to consider something else is possible. So that's the first message. So we're attempting to create a relationship because, as you said at the beginning of your podcast, and as you know, as we listen to you, Michael, you're a master of immediately creating relationships with people. Jumblethink wouldn't have gotten created. You wouldn't be doing this unless you knew and know that you've got to connect with people in a way that they feel that they can trust you, that they can listen, they can have fun, they can be themselves.
Yeah, thank you.
So you're welcome. Thank you for being one of those people in the world. So once we've began to have that conversation, our whole gig is access. And what we mean by access is, when I started this many, many, many years ago, and you walked into a bookstore, there'd be a tiny little section reserved for management, leadership, strategy, and all that stuff. And now the bookstores are overflowing with all those books.
Yeah.
And if I take down any of those books and I open it up, I go and I say to myself, this is great stuff. I love it. But then I notice that there is a gap between experiencing that it's great stuff and being able to integrate that into my everyday actions.
Yeah.
So what's missing for us, what's missing for people in these companies is access. So when you say, how does that happen? How does the ball get slowed down and get bigger? We've got to create a way that people have access to what's actually happening in their company, in the batter's box, when they're having all the things that are coming at them come at them, the month-end results, the strategies, their employees, their budgets, their, the complexity of their world. How do you do that? So we ask people to consider that what's happening in an organization, this business called culture, we're inviting people to consider that what literally that is composed of are the conversations that are happening, the conversations they're having with each other, conversations they're having with their customers, the conversations they're having about their competitors, and that really big conversation that we have with ourselves. And why we ask people to consider that, not like this is the truth, but like an idea, is because they can access it. It's not theoretical. It's not abstract. They can listen to the conversations that are happening, and then they can ask themselves, will these conversations give us the future we're committed to? And the great thing about organizations, even though they act like it time and again, is they are not genetically encoded. They can continuously adapt to the circumstances that are happening. So how do you adapt? You keep listening to the conversations that are happening in your organization with yourself, and you keep asking us, we are the chief of annoyance. We annoy, we annoy because we're annoying people, first of all, to listen to themselves, to listen to each other, so that they can see, oh, I see. If I'm standing in the batter's box and the conversation that I'm having is, I haven't hit for the last 3 times. I'm right on the bubble of feeling like I'm really not there anymore for playing at this level, or I never hit against this pitcher. Oh, look at this. It's, bottom of the 8th inning. We've got to score. Those are all fine. Those conversations are going to happen no matter what. This is not about positive thinking. In our view, positive thinking is trying to put something over the top of what's actually happening. It's rather than having our actions derived from all of our doubts, concerns, worries, and fears, having our actions derived from our commitment. And what distinguishes us as human beings, as a species, we can imagine, we can invent, we can create, we can stand, we can declare. We're the only species on the planet that can say something and act out of it. So every moment of our lives, we're making a choice. We're either acting from what's already happening, hacking the past, already happened, or we're acting from what's possible. And so our job as future hackers is to remind people, because they wouldn't be there unless they've done this many times in their lives and in their careers, right?
Yeah.
The difficulty is the way they explain what happened won't give them access to having it happen again except by accident. So our job is to allow people to see that every breakthrough in the history of humankind, every breakthrough in their lives and in their company came from somebody standing on their own 2 feet and saying, creating, imagining, inventing, declaring something is possible, and then acting from that. And as you can tell, I could go on for a long time with this rant, and I will stop to see if you have any questions.
I think there's a lot to unpack there, and I know that we don't necessarily have the time to do that. You mentioned the big idea.
Yeah.
And we live in a world of big data.
Mm.
How do we get people to stop listening to the noise of whether it's, you made the a great comment there where it's like we need people talking about culture in the organization, what their customers' culture is, what's going on in that environment. And so often we're ruling our businesses based on big data, and data can tell us part of the picture. In your job of being chief annoyer at those businesses, as you called it, as being that voice that says, hey guys, let's get back to what's important here. How do you help them shift or sift through the noise of all of this stuff going on in these big organizations to boil it down to the real voice of what is important?
That's a great question, Michael. Well, one thing is, in my, I like to talk about my generation, and something that interests me is to watch how my generation continues to adapt and enter the workforce and begin to relate to the the world of big data, the world of exponential technology, and all of that. So one trend and one thing that that I think underlies also what Bix is saying is there's this world of a lot of the time the buzzword in Silicon Valley and elsewhere right now is disruption. You got to disrupt. You got to totally, you get in there and disrupt the industry, and everybody's worried about being disrupted or wanting to disrupt themselves, and we absolutely see, as Bix began, he said, my life has been one big disruption.
Yeah.
So, what Bix is said is that we as human beings have the opportunity to have a conversation, a specific kind of conversation, one in which we are creating. And so, we say that it's not disruption, which is the source, but creation. And so if I'm a CEO and I want to be, and I'm a leader and I want to change the world and have something be successful in the world today, what I notice as I look at the millennial generation is we are not going to put up with organizations that are not up to something in the world anymore. And so I look out at these successful companies these days, and then the ones that aren't successful. And, as you asked your question in such a great way, what is the underlying theme that sifts through all the noise or all the fog? And, one consistent thing that comes up as I watch is this idea that an organization has to have a transformational purpose in the world, something that is brings people together beyond money and beyond people gaining status in the world. And so often, we look out and we see these organizations, that are up to something, and the pull that has not only on their customers but on the community around them, such that Apple's iPhone, there's people lining up a week in advance just to get the new iPhone. So why is that? It's not because the iPhone is such a great piece of technology, although that's part of it. It's that Apple has committed to something beyond financial gain. They're committing to changing the world and impacting design and impacting our lives in a positive way.
Google is do no evil.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's what I notice is that something that sifts through all of that is that an organization, a leader stands up and says, here's what we're really up to in the world. And then people can see, oh, I see it. That's something I want to be a part of. And it impacts their actions. And if, all the greatest talent in the world is moving to these companies that are up to something.
And that, when we start with an organization, we're sitting with the CEO or the leader of the organization, and we are working with them so that they can get a purpose out of their mouth that resonates deeply with themselves as a human being, something that's worth it for them, and can create that in the world such that it's an authentic, generative, huge opportunity, vision, all those words that go with that. If a leader thinks, well, I can change my organization without changing myself, forget it, right?
Right.
And so we're working with the CEOs first because they want that. It's not that they don't want that. They want that, but nobody's hacked into them in a way that they know that is absolutely vital for creating the future of their business and their own leadership.
You talk about going in and sitting down with the CEO and with different members of the team and starting to ask questions. And a lot of people view consultants and coaches as the savior, as the person that's going to come in and say, do X, Y, and Z, and all of your problems are going to go away, and we're all going to ride into the sunset, and the world is just going to be forever the perfect place it's supposed to be. but you really put a focus on partnering with customers instead of being the savior of the day. You're coming in to walk on their journey. How is that approach different, and how does that change the outcome that those companies get?
Thank you. Yeah, it's always their meeting. It's not our meeting. So if they're the CEO, they're standing up and they're saying, here's why we're getting together, and here's what we're committed to doing this. I have asked Joe and Bix Bickson, B Squared, to support us in fulfilling that endeavor. So the signal is right there from the beginning that this is their meeting, and we've designed all of our work together that it's very early in our work together that people are generating it for themselves. And then our definition of a team is to commit to each other to hold each other accountable for the results that they're committed to. So it starts being peer-to-peer quite early in the game, and we keep stepping backwards and infusing with ideas so that they can get their work done. It's not about our work. And at the beginning, it feels like it is, because these are new ideas, new words, new methodologies and all that, but that goes away very quickly. Does that begin to respond to your question?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think going one step further, you talk about the ownership of the change starts with whoever's leading that organization or that department or whatever place that you're working with it. So if it's the CEO of the company, it's their meeting, you're there to help guide them. And so you're working with these executives and gonna make a very wide statement here that is very stereotypical and completely unfair to make. So let's just be honest about that from get-go. CEOs have a reputation of being very definitive, very results-driven, very type A, very focused. How do you help them in their process to discover who they are and change the things that they need to change? Because you mentioned that the change starts with the leadership, not with you or not with even their employees. How do you help them in that process of that discovery of what's going on internally with them, whether it's changing an outlook or changing who they are in their leadership style? What are some things that you do to help bring them back to that sense of true identity, true sense of being?
Well, as you said earlier, first of all, annoy them.
You said it first. I just repeated you.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. So one way to talk about it is to continuously strengthen that we're real, that we're trying to figure this out together, that, as you said, we don't have the answer, but we know that we can create the answer. It took me years, Michael, to sit across from a CEO and have her or him say, what should we do? I don't know. We got this big challenge. And it took me years to be able to say, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I know that we can, first of all, start talking about it. And second of all, get a lot of smart people in the room to figure this out. And then the other thing is to be not kidding with them. And a way to talk about that is to be ruthless and compassionate at the same time. So one of the first things that happens is we will, CEO says, okay, this is interesting. How do we proceed? And we say, well, first of all, we're going to go talk to your team and come back to you with the way they're thinking about things. And two things happen in those conversations. One, we begin to create a relationship with the people on the team so that we're not the fifth or the 10th or the 15th consultant that's talking to them. So they see, oh, maybe these guys have something that is valuable. And number two, to really hear what is going on in the organization. One way to think about that is that leaders are always projecting their unresolved issues onto the organization. And the people in the organization are always living out those unresolved issues. So in these initial conversations with their team, they loosen up enough to tell us, here's the way they see the world. And a lot of it has to do with the power dynamics in an organization. and every organization has them, no matter whether it's, the most highly touted, coolest place to work or the most terrible place to work. Every organization has some of this going on. So we come back to the CEO or to the leader and say, here's what your people are saying. And it's very difficult because leaders, for the most part, are drinking their own bathwater.
Yeah.
So everybody's telling them, because look at, either they founded the company or they've built the company or they're leading the company with success. So the people around them, because of the power dynamics and because of everything else that takes us hours to unravel, they're telling, oh, aren't you this? I'm so appreciative and all that. But at the same time, they have all these other conversations that they're experiencing. So our job is to be ruthless in saying, here is what we are hearing. But at the same time, being compassionate, what we call soft eyes, so that when we're saying these things, we're not saying them as an attack. We're saying them as, we know that you want to grow, that you want to develop your business, that you want your people to thrive, that you want this to be a great place and a great business. And every leader is dealing with these issues, which doesn't take the edge off because it's their issues. And if they don't deal with them, it's going to persist. So it's that business of being ruthless on one side, of very straight talk. And it's uncomfortable as can be for the leaders because it's their team. They get up every morning, every day and say, what can they do to have this work? It's not like they get up every day and say, how can I make it a terrible situation for my people? It's just the opposite.
Right.
And yet, like it or not, every organization has these dynamics that are happening where if they don't get brought out from the background into the foreground, they will drive people in ways that doesn't allow the company to thrive. So it's that those first conversations are extraordinarily important. And then consistently, somebody will ask in an early meeting to the CEO, why are we doing this? One of the guys we're working up here, we said, listen, your people are going to say to you, why are we doing this? And this guy said to us, because it's for me. I need to do this. I need to take this on for myself to actually be the leader I am committed to being for this company to be what it could be. So at that moment, if somebody says, why are we doing this? That's the signal for us that for the leader, the CEO, whoever she or he is, to say, no, this is my gig. Joe and Bix happen to be here, yes, and they're supporting this, but this is my commitment. Does that respond to your question?
Yeah, absolutely. Joe, you mentioned a few minutes ago, with millennials, it was important for places like Apple and Google and businesses as a whole to create a bigger picture, to create the change that they're looking to create.
Yes. Yeah.
You are really pushing into something that you call a new corporate DNA. What is that? Because I think that was the start of, those comments are the foundation of that. What is a new corporate DNA and why is it important?
Thank you for asking. Yes. So, the way we talk about it is if people are willing to engage with this idea that the DNA, the culture, the buzz phrase is culture eats strategy for breakfast. So what's meant by that is get rid of your 5-year plan. If your culture is pulling for some kind of future other than what you want to have happen in the world. And so, this whole business of organizational DNA, of organizational culture, the first thing that people have to be present to is what is going on in the organization. What are the conversations? And we say that there's 3 mysteries to human beings. three mysteries in the world. The first mystery is air to a bird. Second mystery, water to a fish. And the third is humankind to ourselves. And so then we ask, okay, when does a fish know about water? And so, Michael, when does a fish know about water?
Probably till it doesn't have it.
That's right. Exactly. When you pull it out of water.
Right.
Oh, I see. This is water. Okay. So, the way we talk about it is human beings don't know the water that we're swimming in. So the first opportunity that when we walk into a client is, what is the water we're swimming in? And the way we engage people is that to consider the idea that the water is the conversations people are having, conversations they're having with themselves, with their coworkers, with their boss, with the suppliers, with the customers, with the competitors. So the first big idea is that human beings, people in organizations, the DNA of that organization is the conversations people are having. And why we ask people to consider that is because you can listen to those conversations. And so when you think about what is this new DNA, first of all, you got to understand what is the old DNA. And the old DNA is something that you can listen to. You can listen to it by going into an organization and literally asking people what is going on at this organization. So, and then if we're willing to understand what is the current conversation people are having, what's the current DNA, what's the current culture, then people can see, okay, there's a possibility for a different culture, for a different DNA. And so we say that, future hacking is a new management discipline. It's a new way for people within organizations to relate. And it's, as Bix said, it's a unique design and body of knowledge that allows people to shift the kind of conversations that they're having from one of that, whatever's happened to our organization, whatever's happened in the world is going to determine what we can or cannot do in the future, to that we have everything to say about the way it goes at our company.
That's good. That's really good. One of the things that you talk about a lot is creating a pathway for innovation. And creating a reliable pathway to translate into ideas, into action, and resulting with velocity. What does it mean to create a culture of innovation?
Well, once people, one thing we say is that choice is the gateway drug to freedom.
Okay.
And so once people see that they have a choice, because when we start, like it or not, we as human beings literally experience being trapped, but we don't know we're trapped until somebody shows us that we're trapped. We're trapped in the kind of thinking, attitudes, behaviors, approaches that we're currently invested in, and that level of investment gives us the level of performance that's possible. So the first thing is allowing people to see that they're trapped in a way that allows people to see, oh, I see there is something else possible. And that's what we call remember.
Okay.
So the word remember comes from remember, which means put back together again. So
Right.
when we see that we have a choice, that at every moment of our lives, we're making a choice. We're either acting from what's already happened, which will give us more of what's already happened, or we're acting from what's possible. When people remember this, the room lights up, people light up, people are returned to what it is to be a fully expressive human being. So that's the first thing that opens up. And so people remember they've got something to say. They can create, they can imagine, they can invent, then designing ways for them to express fully what's possible. And as you know, Michael, people, you got to give permission that in the organization for people to begin to say, well, what about this possibility? What about that possibility? What about this possibility? What about that? And the difficulty is we're so used by how are we going to do that? How are we going to do it? Do we have the budget for that? Can we get the resources for that? Will the market allow for that? That's the wrong question to ask when you're involved in an innovative conversation.
Okay.
The right question to ask is, what are we committed to?
Yeah.
What about this? What about this idea? What about that idea? What about this idea? All these things now that we take for granted in our world, whether it's the smartphone or thousands of other examples, or whether it's right now we're having this podcast, you're in Pennsylvania, we're in Vancouver, Canada, and we're having a conversation like we're in the same room. All of that came out of somebody saying, why don't we try? And how about this? And if I do this, and then if I do that, what? And somebody saying, okay, well, let's try it.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the opening for innovation, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I think that's really, really good. Before we dive into rapid fire questions, what would be the one suggestion you would give to a CEO or a business leader that is just feeling completely overwhelmed by a situation in their job, in their business? What would be a starting place for them to start unburying themselves and returning to a place of human to remember they have choices?
First one is it's normal. Everybody is sitting there thinking what they're dealing with is their personal problem. And so we keep it relating to it. If I got over this, if I was different, if I was more educated, if I was richer, if I had more experience, if I had a better team. So we all think it's personal. So the first thing for CEOs and people that are having that experience to recognize this is normal for us to have these kinds of thoughts, concerns, fears, and worries and overwhelmness. Okay, that's the first thing. The second thing is they can create their way out of this.
Okay.
We are the champion of people's commitments. So, if you look at I'm realizing I'm a guy, so I have to talk about sports. I apologize. But look at the number of coaches on the sidelines, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Look, it's everybody that, these people are saying, I'm committed to peak performance, and I'm going to find the resources that it's required to have me accomplish what I'm committed to. It's not about the coach. It's about the person that's playing, making sure that they're finding everything that's available for them to accomplish their commitment. So that's the second thing is you can create your way out of this. Find people, find resources that are going to be the champion of your commitment.
That's so good. That's really, really good advice.
Thank you.
I think a lot of people get in those positions. Anyone in leadership has experienced those moments of being just completely buried. And I think it's easy to feel isolated and alone, but it's really helpful that the advice that you gave, I think, is really simple steps, but powerful steps, and
Thank
really
you.
shifting that. How can someone connect with you? They're resonating with what you're doing. Maybe they have a big corporation that they run, or maybe they just want to learn more about the culture that you're creating. How can they learn and connect with you?
Yeah, thanks for asking, Michael. Great thing is Bix wrote a book last year. You can find it at thebixbook.com, and then our website is www.bixon2.com. Yeah, so and you spell Bickson by Bickson, B as in boy.
And that's everybody will write Bixon. So for everybody out there, Bickson 2.
That's awesome. Well, let's dive
Thank
into a couple rapid fire questions. These are questions that are a little bit more general, just short answers for each one. And I don't know if both of you want to answer it or if one of you wants to run with each of the questions. Up to you. But these are a lot of fun. So
Fun.
What is a tip that you would give someone with a big idea or a dream and they simply don't know where to start?
Start with the mindset. So don't start with thinking I need a bunch of knowledge or skills. Start with the mindset that I can create.
That's good. That's good. The next question would be, what is one change you'd like to see in the world around you?
People getting over the lie that we're not profoundly connected to each other and recognizing we are connected to each other.
That's so good. That's so good.
Mm.
What do you want your legacy to be? And I think I'd like both of you to answer this. As a father and son, as people that both are in different stages of your life, legacy means different things to you. So what would you like your legacy to be?
Well, being the old guy, I can go first. That I can have the experience of fully contributing to people's lives, to life, to the evolving organizations that we can create in the world. That I'm committed to my legacy being that I contribute to life and to the world.
Thank you. Yes, and for me, I'd say that I'd like to leave a legacy of play. For me, play is the tension between the rules of the game and the freedom to act within those rules. And so, I think the most biggest capability organizations and teams need to develop is the ability to play within the rules, such that we can invent, create. That's the whole. In your website, you say we're about dreamers, makers, innovators, and influencers. And I think the biggest capability for each of us and for those groups is the ability to play. That's
really good. Who or what inspires you?
Long list. Let's see. Well, as Joe said, the Ernest Shackletons of the world, the Steve Jobs, but the guy out in a small company sitting there thinking, I can create something, that's a huge contribution to the world and to our business. I've got an infinite list of people that inspire me. One of the videos that we show is Herbie Hancock's when he was playing with Miles Davis, and they were in the middle of this really jamming hot session, and I think it was Stuttgart, Germany, and Miles was wailing and the drummer was wailing and Herbie was playing the piano, and Herbie played the wrong chord. And at the moment he played the wrong chord, he knew he'd played the wrong chord, and he took his hands off the keys. He put them up by his face, aghast that he would do this. And Miles took that chord and created the whole next expression of his solo.
Wow.
Because there was no wrong chords for Miles. There was only what happened. So our heroes are people that can live like that no matter what happens, they see they have the possibility to create.
That's really good.
For myself, I'd say I think that's beautiful. The one thing that we say is that the world needs more misfits. A lot of misfits are those on the edge of society, on the boundaries, pushing at the edges. And I think that so much of the world really puts misfits down and teaches us that we shouldn't be a misfit. We really should be being somebody other than we are. And so the opportunity I think is that, and the heroes that I look up to are those that don't necessarily fit, and the ones that are willing to be themselves and act themselves and do something phenomenal in the world without necessarily the cultural or societal agreement.
And that's a problem for a father.
That's funny. We had a great guest a little while ago, and they said innovation happens at the edges.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I just think that what you're saying really resonates. It just brought back that memory.
Yeah.
Thank you.
What are you currently reading or watching?
I just got Tim Ferriss's book, Something of Titans.
Tools of Titans. Yeah,
Tools
great
of
book.
Titan.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of heroes in that book, right?
Yeah.
So that's very cool. And you're reading, working on?
One of our favorite books recently that we've been reading is a book called Play Bigger. It's by a guy named Christopher Lochhead and a few other people that really about how dreamers, pirates, innovators are reinventing the markets that their companies are in, and really inventing audacious, powerful companies in the world.
That's cool. Good deal. Sounds like two great books.
Mm.
I end every episode with this final question. It's probably my favorite thing to ask in the entire world, and it's this. What is one dream you're still wanting to fulfill in your own life?
Well, to be someone that can be recognized as big as the ideas that we have, right? So we're always fighting for, I'm not Steve Jobs, I don't think. But I know we've got this huge contribution to make.
Yeah.
And so we're battling I'm battling to have the opportunity to make that contribution. I've had lots of great clients, from Starbucks to Guinness to Lululemon to tons and tons more. But there's still for me this opportunity to go, wait a second, these ideas are really valuable. And how do I get the stage to make that expression possible?
That's cool.
Mm. Yeah, for myself, I'd say that, it's really for my, I've got this perspective of being able to work with someone who's a different generation of me. And, what I'm committed to is that millennials really get who they are in the world, get that each of us, not just millennials, but all people, but especially young people who are going into the world, entering the world and looking out and asking the question, who am I? What am I up to? What do I want to create with my life? I'm really committed that young people have the opportunity to really create their lives, design and fulfill the future of their choosing, and design it in a way that leaves them totally switched on and absolutely fulfilled.
Very, very cool. Well, Bix and Joe, it has been just a lot of fun chatting with you today. Thanks for taking time out of your day and sharing your story with us.
You are so welcome. Thanks for creating the opportunity, Michael. It's really been a great conversation.
Once again, I want to thank today's guests, Bix and Joe Bickson from Bickson Squared, for being the guest. You can check them out at bixon2.com/jumble. Links are in the episode notes along with on the Jumblethink website. On Thursday's episode, we have Elin and Guy Ferdman, the founders of Satori Prime, and also the hosts of Have It All podcast. They've been featured in The Art of Charm, Huffington Post, Entrepreneur Magazine, Freedom Fastlane, Superhuman Entrepreneur. They are visionaries and relentless dreamers, super cool guys. It's a fun episode. We talk about all kinds of cool topics. You want to make sure to check that episode out this Thursday. If you haven't already and you love the Jumblethink podcast, go on over to iTunes and make sure that you subscribe to the Jumblethink podcast. It makes it easy for making sure that you catch every episode on Mondays and Thursdays. While you're there, make sure that you write a review and give us a rating. It helps us out. It gets the word out there so people know that the Jumblethink podcast is awesome and people should listen to it. I personally want to thank you for listening to the Jumblethink podcast. It means so much to me that so many people would take the time to listen to what we have to share, along with sharing the stories of our guests who are incredible people creating amazing things. Ultimately, I hope the podcast has encouraged you to go chase that big idea and dream, knowing that it's possible, that others have gone before you and they've created their ideas and dreams. So I hope it's encouraged you and that you get out there and create the world you believe could exist. Thanks for tuning in, and we look forward to catching up with you in our next episode.
Les mères de famille, les enfants, peuvent également prendre un moment revitalisant dans quelques mois, lorsque vous aurez bien saisi la technique et que vous serez maître de votre corps. Vous pourrez vous décontracter même en travaillant.